The stagecoach burned behind her, black smoke clawing at the Arizona sky, and Adeline Wren stumbled through the desert with blood on her hands and no idea which way led to survival. 3 passengers dead. The driver's body twisted in the dirt, and somewhere in the shimmering heat, the riders who'd done this were still out there. She dropped to her knees, throat raw, vision blurring, when the shadow of a man on horseback fell across her face. He didn't speak English. He didn't smile. But when he extended his hand, she took it, because dying alone seemed worse than whatever came next. If you want to see where this story goes, whether Adeline survives the desert, the war, or her own heart, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The desert didn't care if you were innocent. Adeline learned that in the first hour after the attack, when the only sound left was the crackling of burning wood and the hiss of her own breath through cracked lips, she'd been heading west with a leather satchel full of medical supplies and a naive belief that a frontier town called Ashford needed her more than Philadelphia did. A teaching position, a new start, a chance to do something that mattered. Now she was on her knees in the sand staring at a dead man's boot. The driver, Dutch they'd called him, had taken a bullet through the throat before the coach even stopped rolling. The older woman with the cameo brooch had been shot in the chest while trying to climb out the window. The man in the gray suit had made it 10 feet before they dragged him back and finished him with a knife. Adeline had been in the back, crammed between 2 crates of flour and a trunk that didn't belong to her. When the shooting started, she'd pressed herself into the floorboards and held her breath. She'd heard the riders laughing, heard them rifling through luggage, heard one of them say, "Nothing worth a damn," before they torched the whole thing and rode off. She'd waited until the hoofbeats faded. Then she'd crawled out through the broken door, choking on smoke, and ran. Not toward anything, just away. Now the sun was directly overhead, and she had no hat, no water, and no sense of direction. The mountains in the distance looked like teeth. The ground shimmered with heat. She tried to stand, but her legs folded, and she went down hard on one hip, biting back a sob. "Get up," she whispered. "Get up, Adeline." Her voice sounded small, pathetic. She hated it. She tried again, using a scraggly juniper bush for support, and managed to stay vertical long enough to scan the horizon. Nothing, just red dirt and rock and the occasional Joshua tree standing like a scarecrow. No road, no buildings, no people. Except, she squinted. There, a figure on horseback, maybe a quarter-mile out, moving parallel to her position. Not coming closer, not leaving either, just watching. Adeline's heartbeat kicked up. She thought about running, but there was nowhere to go. Thought about screaming, but her throat was too dry. So she stood there, swaying, and waited to see if this was rescue or something worse. The rider came closer, slowly. He was darker-skinned than anyone she'd seen in Philadelphia, with long black hair tied back and a shirt that looked like it had been stitched from hide. No saddle, no reins, or at least none she could see. The horse, a muscular paint with a wild eye, moved like it was reading his thoughts. When he was 10 feet away, he stopped. Adeline stared up at him. Her mouth was too dry to speak. He looked at her for a long moment, expression unreadable, then said something in a language she didn't recognize. The words were sharp and rolling at the same time, like stones in a river. She shook her head. I don't understand." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then he looked past her, toward the smoke still rising in the distance. "Dead?" he asked. His English was halting, but clear. Adeline nodded. "Everyone. They burned it." He was silent. Then he swung down from the horse in one smooth motion and walked toward her. Adeline took an instinctive step back, but her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the dirt. The man crouched in front of her. Up close, she could see the scars on his hands, the beadwork on his belt, the way his eyes were the color of dark amber. He reached out slowly, like she was a spooked animal, and touched her wrist. "Water," he said. He pulled a skin pouch from his belt and handed it to her. Adeline hesitated, then took it. The water was warm and tasted faintly of leather, but it was the best thing she'd ever put in her mouth. She drank too fast, coughed, and drank again. "Thank you," she gasped. He didn't respond, just stood, walked back to his horse, and mounted in one fluid motion. Adeline's stomach dropped. "Wait." He looked down at her. Please, she said. I can't. There's nothing out here. I'll die. The man's expression didn't change. He said something else in his language, then gestured sharply to the horse. Adeline blinked. You want me to... He extended his hand. She looked at it, looked at the desert, looked at the smoke still curling into the sky. Then she took his hand. He pulled her up behind him with surprising ease, and before she could even settle herself, the horse was moving. Not fast, not slow, just steady, cutting through the desert like it knew exactly where it was going. Adeline wrapped her arms around the man's waist and held on. She didn't ask where they were headed, didn't ask his name, just pressed her face against his back and tried not to think about what would happen next. They rode for hours. The sun crawled across the sky, then began its descent, painting the rocks in shades of orange and red. Adeline's body ached everywhere, her legs, her back, her ribs. She kept dozing off, jerking awake every time the horse shifted beneath her. At some point, the landscape changed. The flat desert gave way to rolling hills, then to rocky outcroppings and narrow passes. They followed a dry riverbed for a while, then climbed a steep trail that made Adeline's stomach lurch. When they finally stopped, the sun was low on the horizon, and they were standing at the edge of a canyon. The man dismounted and gestured for her to do the same. Adeline slid off the horse, her legs nearly buckling, and looked around. There was a small cluster of structures below. Wickiups, she realized, made of branches and hides. Smoke rose from a central fire. People moved between the dwellings, their voices drifting up on the wind. This is... She stopped. You live here. The man didn't answer. He started down the trail leading the horse, and Adeline followed because there was nothing else to do. As they descended, people began to notice them. A woman with gray braids looked up from where she was grinding something in a stone bowl. A young boy paused mid-throw, a stick still in his hand. An older man stepped out of one of the wickiups, his face weathered and serious. They all stared at Adeline. She wanted to say something, explain herself, apologize, thank them, but the words stuck in her throat. The man who'd rescued her said something in his language, his tone calm but firm. The others listened, then began murmuring among themselves. The older man stepped forward. He looked Adeline up and down, then spoke directly to her rescuer. The conversation was quick, clipped, and entirely incomprehensible to Adeline. Finally, the older man turned to her. You are hurt? Adeline blinked. His English was better than the younger man's. No, I mean bruised, tired, but not hurt. You come from the dead wagon. It wasn't a question. Yes, Adeline said quietly. The older man nodded. He looked at the younger man again, said something that sounded like a name, Rowan, and then gestured toward one of the wickiups. Rowan. So that was his name. Rowan led her toward the structure, his expression still unreadable. Inside, it was dim and cool, with woven mats on the floor and a small fire pit in the center. He pointed to a spot near the back. Sit. Adeline sat. Rowan crouched by the fire and began adding kindling. Within minutes, a small flame was crackling, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Adeline watched him in silence. He moved with the kind of economy she associated with people who didn't waste energy on unnecessary things. Every motion had a purpose. Thank you, she said finally, for bringing me here. Rowan glanced at her, then back at the fire. You cannot stay in the desert. No, she agreed. I couldn't. Silence. What happens now? Adeline asked. Rowan didn't answer right away. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending up a spray of sparks. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. The elders will decide. Decide what? If you stay. If you go. Adeline's chest tightened. And if they say I go? Rowan looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not pity, not kindness, something harder. Then you go. The next morning, Adeline woke to the sound of voices outside. She sat up, disoriented, and realized she was still in the wickiup. Rowan was gone. The fire had burned down to embers. She pushed herself to her feet, her body protesting every movement, and stepped outside. The village was already awake. Women were tending to fires, children were running between the structures, and men were gathered near the horses, speaking in low tones. Adeline spotted Rowan near the edge of the group. He was talking to the older man from the night before, the one who spoke English. They both looked serious. She started toward them, but before she could get close, a young woman intercepted her. "You are the one Rowan brought." Adeline stopped. "Yes." The young woman looked her over, her expression skeptical. "You speak our language?" "No, I'm sorry." The young woman snorted. "Of course not." She turned and walked away. Adeline stood there, feeling conspicuous and out of place. She didn't know the rules here, didn't know what was expected of her, didn't even know if she was a guest or a prisoner. Rowan finished his conversation and walked over. "You will meet the elders," he said. "Now?" "Now." He led her to the largest wickiup in the village. Inside, 5 people sat in a semicircle, 3 men and 2 women, all older, all watching her with expressions that gave nothing away. The man who spoke English was there. He gestured for Adeline to sit. She did. "You are Adeline Wren," he said. "Yes." "Rowan says you were with the dead wagon, the one the raiders burned." "Yes." "You were going to Ashford." "Yes, I had a teaching position." One of the women said something in their language. The man translated. "She asked why you were alone." "I wasn't alone. There were 4 of us. The raiders killed everyone else." The woman spoke again, her tone sharper this time. "She asks why you survived." Adeline swallowed. "I hid. I was in the back. They didn't see me." The woman's eyes narrowed, but she didn't say anything else. The man leaned forward. "You understand where you are?" "I think so. Rowan brought me here." "Rowan saved your life," the man said. "That means something. Among our people, when you save a life, it becomes part of yours. You understand?" Adeline wasn't sure she did, but she nodded anyway. "We will give you time," the man continued. "You will stay here. You will learn, and when the time comes, you will decide if you belong here or if you belong somewhere else." "How long?" Adeline asked. The man smiled faintly. "As long as it takes." The days blurred together. Adeline was given a corner of a wickiup to sleep in, shared with an older woman named Nahala, who spoke no English but had a steady, calming presence. Nahala showed her how to grind corn, how to weave baskets, how to carry water without spilling it. It was hard work, harder than anything Adeline had done in Philadelphia, but it was also honest. No one coddled her, no one praised her. If she did something wrong, they corrected her. If she did it right, they moved on to the next task. Rowan kept his distance, but she saw him often, riding out with the other men, returning with game, repairing tools, speaking with the elders. He never sought her out, never asked how she was. But sometimes, when she looked up, she'd catch him watching her. And he never looked away first. One evening, after a long day of hauling firewood, Adeline sat by the central fire, her hands blistered and aching. Nahala handed her a small bowl of stew, and Adeline ate it without asking what was in it. Rowan appeared across the fire, his face shadowed. "You work hard," he said. Adeline looked up, surprised. "I try." "Most would have left by now." "Where would I go?" Rowan tilted his head slightly, as if considering that. Then he sat down, not close, but not far either. "You still want to go to Ashford?" he asked. Adeline hesitated. "I don't know. You came here for a reason." "I came here because I thought I could help people," Adeline said quietly. "I thought I could teach, make a difference." "And now?" She looked down at her blistered hands. "Now I'm not sure what I thought I knew." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Ashford is 3 days' ride. If you want to go, I will take you." Adeline's heart twisted. "Why would you do that?" "Because I brought you here," Rowan said simply. "That makes you my responsibility." "I'm not asking you to be responsible for me." "You did not have to ask." He stood then and walked away, leaving Adeline sitting by the fire with a knot in her chest she couldn't name. The days turned into weeks. Adeline learned more than she thought possible. She learned which plants were edible and which would make you sick. She learned how to start a fire with nothing but friction and patience. She learned the rhythms of the village, the early mornings, the long afternoons, the evenings spent telling stories she couldn't understand but felt in her bones. And she learned Rowan, not through words. He wasn't a man who talked much, but through watching, through the way he moved, the way he listened, the way he held himself apart even when he was surrounded by people. He was respected. That much was clear. When he spoke, people listened. When he made a decision, no one questioned it. But there was something else, too. A loneliness. A distance. One afternoon, Adeline was washing clothes by the river when Rowan appeared, leading his horse. "You have been here a month," he said. Adeline looked up. "Has it been that long?" "Yes." She wrung out a shirt and laid it on a rock to dry. "Feels longer, feels shorter, I don't know." Rowan crouched by the water's edge, letting his horse drink. "The elders say you have earned trust." "That's good," Adeline said carefully. "They say you may stay, or you may go. The choice is yours." Adeline's hand stilled. "And what do you say?" Rowan looked at her then, his dark eyes steady. "I say you should do what is true for you, not what you think is right, not what others expect. What is true." "I don't know what that is," Adeline admitted. "Then you are not ready to choose." He stood, mounted his horse, and rode away. Adeline sat by the river for a long time after that, staring at the water and trying to figure out what truth even meant anymore. Chunk. It was a small thing that changed everything. One evening, Adeline was helping prepare food when one of the children, a boy of maybe 6, tripped and fell into the fire. He screamed, his arms smoking, and chaos erupted. Adeline didn't think. She grabbed the boy, yanked him back, and doused his arm with water from the nearest pot. The skin was red and blistering, and the boy was sobbing, but Adeline's hands were steady. "Hold him still," she said to the woman nearest her. The woman didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. She held the boy while Adeline tore a strip of cloth from her own skirt and wrapped the burn carefully. "Keep it clean," Adeline said. "Change the cloth twice a day. If it gets worse, find me." The woman nodded, her eyes wide. Rowan appeared then, drawn by the commotion. He looked at the boy, at Adeline, at the makeshift bandage. "You know medicine," he said. "Some," Adeline said. "Enough." Rowan's expression shifted just slightly. "The elders should know this." "Why?" "Because it changes things." He was right. Within a day, word had spread. The woman who could heal, the outsider who'd saved the child. People started coming to her with small injuries, cuts, bruises, sprains. Adeline did what she could with the limited supplies she had. She wished for her satchel, lost in the fire, but she made do. And Rowan watched. One night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Adeline sat outside the wickiup, staring up at the stars. Rowan approached quietly. "You are still awake," he said. "So are you." He sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You should stay," he said. Adeline's breath caught. "Why?" "Because you belong here now, whether you know it or not." "I don't belong anywhere," Adeline said quietly. "I never have." Rowan turned to look at her, and for the first time his expression softened. "That is not true. You belong where you choose to be, and you chose to be here." "I didn't choose anything," Adeline said. "I just didn't die." "That is a choice," Rowan said, "the most important one." Adeline looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her chest. Something that scared her and steadied her all at once. "What if I make the wrong choice?" she asked. Rowan's mouth curved, just barely. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "Then you make another one." By the time 2 months had passed, Adeline had stopped counting days. She'd stopped thinking of herself as a visitor, stopped wondering when she'd leave. Because somewhere along the way, the village had become home. And Rowan had become something she didn't have a name for yet. But she felt it every time he looked at her, every time their hands brushed when they worked side by side, every time he said her name, careful and deliberate, like it mattered. She didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in her life, Adeline wasn't afraid of not knowing. 3 months in, and Adeline still dreamed about the stagecoach burning. She'd wake in the dark, gasping, her hands clutching at blankets that weren't there. Nahala would stir beside her, make a low sound of acknowledgement, then go back to sleep. The old woman never asked questions, never offered comfort, just let Adeline breathe through it until the panic subsided. But the dreams were getting shorter, less frequent. The desert was teaching her something she'd never learned in Philadelphia, that survival wasn't about forgetting. It was about carrying what hurt and still getting up in the morning. She was grinding mesquite pods one afternoon when a young girl approached, maybe 8 or 9, with a gash across her forearm that was still bleeding. The girl's mother stood behind her, wringing her hands. "Belle," the woman said in halting English. "Rock." Adeline set down the grinding stone and gestured for the girl to sit. The cut wasn't deep, but it was dirty, full of grit and sand. She cleaned it carefully with water, then pressed a poultice of yarrow and sage against the wound before wrapping it with clean cloth. "Keep it dry," Adeline said. "Come back tomorrow." The woman nodded, then said something in Apache that Adeline was starting to recognize. "Thank you." The words sounded different depending on who said them, but the meaning was always the same. Rowan appeared as they were leaving, carrying a pair of rabbits he'd snared that morning. He watched the woman and child go, then looked at Adeline. "You do this often now." "People keep getting hurt," Adeline said. "I keep helping." The elders notice. "Is that bad?" Rowan crouched beside her, setting the rabbits down. "No. It is good. It means you have purpose here." Adeline wiped her hands on her skirt. "I'm not one of you." "Not yet," Rowan said, "but you could be." There was something in his tone that made her look up. He was watching her with that steady, unreadable expression he always wore. But there was a flicker of something underneath, something that looked almost like hope. "What does that mean?" Adeline asked quietly. Rowan hesitated. Then he said, "There are ways to become part of the people, if you choose it." "Marriage," Adeline said. It wasn't a question. Rowan's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Yes." Adeline's heart kicked hard against her ribs. "Is that what you want?" "What I want does not matter." "That's not an answer." Rowan stood abruptly. "I need to prepare these." He picked up the rabbits and walked away, leaving Adeline sitting there with her pulse hammering in her ears. She didn't see him the rest of that day, or the next. On the third day, Nahala nudged her while they were working and pointed toward the ridge. Rowan was there, standing alone, his back to the village. "Go," Nahala said in Apache. Then, in broken English, "Talk." Adeline wiped her hands on her skirt and climbed the ridge. Rowan didn't turn when she approached, but she could tell he knew she was there. "You've been avoiding me," Adeline said. "Yes." "Why?" Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because I do not know how to say what I need to say." Adeline stepped closer, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. "Try." He turned then, and the look in his eyes nearly stopped her breath. "I brought you here to save your life," Rowan said, "but you have saved mine in return. You do not see it, but the people do. They see you work. They see you heal. They see you belong. And I—" He stopped, swallowed. "You what?" Adeline asked softly. "I see you," Rowan said, "and I cannot stop." Adeline's throat tightened. "Rowan, you do not have to answer now," he said quickly, "or ever. I only need you to know that if you stay, it will not be as a guest. It will be as one of us, as my—" He didn't finish the sentence. Adeline reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm and rough, scarred from years of work and survival. "I'm not ready to say yes," she said, "but I'm not saying no either." Rowan's fingers closed around hers, firm and steady. "That is enough." They stood there on the ridge as the sun dropped lower, and for the first time since the stagecoach burned, Adeline felt something other than fear. She felt wanted. But wanting something and keeping it were two different things, and she'd learned that the hard way. The decision came 2 weeks later, and it wasn't the one Adeline expected to make. She woke one morning with a strange ache in her chest, like something was pulling her in 2 directions at once. She tried to ignore it, threw herself into work, but it didn't fade. By evening, she knew what it was. Guilt. She found Rowan near the horses checking their hooves. He looked up when she approached, and his expression shifted immediately. "What is wrong?" "I need to go to Ashford," Adeline said. Rowan straightened. "Why?" "Because I was supposed to be there months ago. Because there are children who need a teacher. Because I made a promise, and I haven't kept it." "You made no promise to them," Rowan said. "They do not even know you are alive." "That doesn't matter," Adeline said. "I know." Rowan stared at her, his jaw tight. "You think they will welcome you after this long?" "I don't know," but I have to try. And if they do not? Adeline hesitated. Then I'll come back. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and uncertain. Rowan looked away, his hands clenched at his sides. When do you want to leave? Soon. Tomorrow, if you'll take me. I will take you, Rowan said. His voice was flat. I said I would. Adeline wanted to reach for him, to explain, to make him understand, but she didn't know how. So she just nodded and walked away, feeling like she'd broken something she didn't know how to fix. They left at dawn. Nahala packed Adeline a small bundle of food and handed her a woven shawl without a word. The elders watched from a distance, their expressions unreadable. A few of the children waved. The young girl with the scarred arm ran up and pressed something into Adeline's hand. A small carved bird, roughly made but carefully polished. Adeline tucked it into her pocket, her throat too tight to speak. Rowan was already mounted, his face hard. Adeline climbed up behind him, and they rode out of the village in silence. The journey took 2 days. They didn't talk much. Rowan answered her questions about the land, about the route, but he didn't offer anything more. At night, they camped under the stars, and Adeline lay awake listening to the sound of his breathing and wondering if she'd just made the worst mistake of her life. On the second afternoon, they crested a low hill, and Ashford came into view. It wasn't much. A main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple rising above the rest, a scattering of houses on the outskirts. Smoke rose from a few chimneys. A wagon creaked past, loaded with crates. Adeline's stomach twisted. This is it? Rowan asked. This is it. Rowan guided the horse down the hill and into the edge of town. People turned to stare. A woman clutched her child closer. A man on the porch of the general store stood and shaded his eyes, watching them approach. Rowan stopped near the church. Where do you go? He asked. The schoolhouse, I think, if it's still there. I will take you. You don't have to. I will take you, Rowan repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. They rode through town slowly, and the stares followed them. Adeline could hear the whispers, feel the weight of judgment, even before anyone spoke. The schoolhouse was at the far end of town, a small building with peeling paint and a crooked sign. Rowan stopped in front of it and dismounted. Adeline slid down beside him, her legs unsteady. I will wait, Rowan said. You don't have to. I will wait. Adeline looked at him, at the hard set of his jaw, the way his hand rested on the knife at his belt. He looked like a man preparing for a fight. I'll be quick, she said. She walked up the steps and knocked on the door. A woman answered, middle-aged, graying hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing a plain brown dress and a suspicious expression. Yes? My name is Adeline Wren, Adeline said. I was supposed to arrive here 3 months ago, for the teaching position. The woman's eyes widened. Miss Wren? We thought you were dead. I nearly was. The stagecoach was attacked. I was rescued. The woman's gaze flicked past Adeline to Rowan, still standing by the horse, and her expression hardened. By him. Yes. And you've been with his people all this time. Yes. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. I see. Adeline's chest tightened. I came as soon as I could. I know I'm late, but if the position is still available. It's not, the woman said flatly. We hired someone else. Weeks ago. Adeline felt the ground shift under her feet. Oh, even if we hadn't, the woman continued, I'm not sure you'd be suitable now, given the circumstances. What circumstances? The woman looked at her like she was dim. You've been living with savages, Miss Wren. That's not the kind of influence we want around our children. The word hit Adeline like a slap. They're not savages, she said quietly. They're people. They saved my life. That may be, the woman said, but it doesn't change facts. Good day, Miss Wren. She closed the door. Adeline stood there staring at the peeling paint, her hands shaking. Behind her, Rowan said, Adeline. She turned. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were dark with something that looked like anger. We should go, he said. I need to. Maybe if I talk to someone else. They will say the same thing, Rowan said. You know this. Adeline wanted to argue, wanted to fight, But she looked at the closed door, at the people watching from across the street, and she knew he was right. "Let's go," she said. They mounted the horse and rode back through town. The stairs were worse now. A man spat as they passed. A woman pulled her children inside. By the time they reached the edge of town, Adeline's face was burning with shame and anger and something she couldn't name. Rowan didn't speak until they were well out of sight of Ashford. Then he said, "I am sorry." "Don't," Adeline said. "Don't apologize for them." "I am not apologizing for them," Rowan said. "I am apologizing because you had to see what they are." Adeline pressed her forehead against his back and closed her eyes. "I was so stupid." "No. You were hopeful. That is different. It doesn't feel different." Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Where do you want to go?" Adeline didn't answer right away. She thought about the village, about Nahala and the carved bird in her pocket, about Rowan's hand in hers on the ridge. "Home," she said finally. "I want to go home." Rowan's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. "Then that is where we will go." They made camp that night in a shallow canyon, sheltered from the wind. Rowan built a fire while Adeline sat on a flat rock, staring at the flames and trying to process what had happened. She'd thought going to Ashford would give her closure, would let her fulfill the promise she'd made to herself. Instead, it had just shown her how little she belonged there, how little she'd ever belonged anywhere. Except, she looked at Rowan, crouched by the fire, his profile sharp in the flickering light, except maybe with him. "Rowan," she said. He looked up. "When you said there were ways to become part of the people, did you mean it?" His expression shifted. "Yes." "And you—" She stopped, trying to find the right words. "You would want that? With me?" Rowan set down the stick he was holding and stood. He crossed to where she sat and crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. "I have wanted that since the day you stopped flinching when I came near," he said. "Since the day you learned to carry water without spilling it. Since the day you saved that child without thinking. I have wanted it, Adeline. I want it now." Adeline's breath caught. "I'm not Apache. I don't speak the language. I don't know the customs. I don't—" "You will learn," Rowan said. "And what you do not learn, I will teach you, if you want to learn." "I do," Adeline said. "I want to stay. I want—" She stopped, her throat tight. Rowan reached out and took her hand. "Say it." "I want you," Adeline whispered. Rowan's grip tightened, then he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was fierce and certain, like a promise sealed in fire. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "Then you will have me," he said, "and I will have you, and we will make this work." Adeline nodded, unable to speak. They stayed like that for a long time, the fire crackling beside them, the stars wheeling overhead. And for the first time since the stagecoach burned, Adeline felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They returned to the village the next afternoon. The elders were waiting. Adeline dismounted, her legs stiff from the ride, and faced them. Rowan stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. The elder who spoke English stepped forward. "You went to the town," he said. "Yes." "And?" Adeline lifted her chin. "They don't want me, but I think I don't want them either." The elder studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Rowan. Rowan said something in Apache, his tone firm. The elder responded, then turned back to Adeline. "Rowan says you wish to stay, as one of us." "Yes," Adeline said. "And you understand what that means?" "I think so. I'll learn the rest." The elder's mouth twitched, almost like a smile. "You will learn, yes, whether you like it or not." He said something else in Apache, and the other elders nodded. Then he extended his hand. Adeline took it. "Welcome home," he said. The ceremony was held 2 weeks later, under a full moon. Adeline didn't understand most of it. The words were in Apache, the rituals unfamiliar, but she understood the feeling, the weight of hands on her shoulders, the smoke from the sacred fire, the way Rowan stood beside her, his presence steady and sure. When it was over, the elder placed a woven bracelet around her wrist and said something she didn't catch. Rowan translated, his voice low. He says you are no longer a stranger. You are kin. Adeline looked down at the bracelet, her vision blurring. Tell him thank you, she said. Rowan spoke, and the elder nodded. Then he clapped Rowan on the shoulder and walked away, leaving them standing by the fire. Are you ready? Rowan asked. For what? To be my wife. Adeline's heart stuttered. I thought, wasn't that what just happened? No, Rowan said. That was you becoming part of the people. This is different. He took her hand and led her away from the fire, toward the edge of the village where the canyon opened up to the stars. There, under the moonlight, he stopped and turned to face her. Among my people, Rowan said, marriage is a choice made twice, once before the people and once in private. The first is ceremony. The second is truth. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands. I choose you, Adeline Wren. Not because I saved your life, not because tradition demands it, but because you are brave and stubborn and you do not give up even when you should. I choose you because I want to, and I will keep choosing you every day for as long as you let me. Adeline's breath shook. I choose you too. Even though you're infuriating and you never talk about your feelings and you made me grind mesquite for 3 weeks straight. Rowan's mouth curved. You hated that. I hated that, Adeline agreed. But I choose you anyway. Rowan kissed her then, soft and slow, and Adeline felt something inside her settle. This was it. This was home. Not a place. Not a building. A person. The next morning, Adeline woke in Rowan's arms, the sun just beginning to creep over the canyon rim. He was already awake, watching her. You snore, he said. Adeline laughed. I do not. You do. Like a bear. You're making that up. I am not. She shoved him, and he caught her wrist, pulling her closer. They stayed like that for a while, tangled together, listening to the village waking up around them. What happens now? Adeline asked. We live, Rowan said simply. We work. We build. And if trouble comes, then we face it, Rowan said. Together. Adeline nodded against his chest. It sounded simple. Maybe too simple. But she'd learned not to borrow trouble before it arrived. So she closed her eyes, breathed in the scent of smoke and sage and Rowan's skin, and let herself believe just for a moment that this peace might last. It didn't. 6 weeks later, a rider came to the village with news. Soldiers were moving through the territory. They were looking for raiders, Apache raiders, they said, who'd been attacking settlements. Rowan listened to the report, his face hard, then dismissed the rider and called a meeting with the elders. Adeline wasn't invited, but she stood at the edge of the circle and listened anyway. The conversation was tense, half in English, half in Apache. The elders were worried. Rowan was angry. We have done nothing, he said. We hunt, we trade, we keep to ourselves. That does not matter to them, one of the elders replied. We are Apache. That is enough. Then we move, another elder said. We go deeper into the canyon, where they cannot follow. And if they follow anyway? Rowan asked. No one had an answer. Adeline stepped forward. What if we talk to them? Every head turned. You cannot talk to soldiers, one of the elders said. They do not listen. Maybe they will, Adeline said. If I'm the one talking. Rowan stood abruptly. No. Rowan, no, he repeated. You saw what they think of us. You saw what they think of you for being here. They will not listen. They will take you, or they will hurt you, and I will not allow that. It's not your decision, Adeline said. Rowan's jaw tightened. You are my wife. That makes it my decision. That's not how this works, Adeline said, her voice rising. I'm not property. I'm a person. And if I can do something to help, I'm going to do it. Even if it gets you killed? Even then. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Finally, the elder who spoke English cleared his throat. We will discuss this further. For now, we watch. We prepare. And we hope the soldiers do not come. But hope, Adeline was learning, was a fragile thing, and in the Arizona territory it broke more often than it held. The soldiers came 3 days later. Adeline was hauling water when she heard the shouts. She dropped the bucket and ran toward the center of the village. where a crowd had gathered near the canyon entrance. Rowan was already there, standing with 4 other men, all of them armed. Across from them, maybe 30 yards out, were 6 soldiers on horseback, blue uniforms dusty from travel, rifles slung across their backs. One of them, an officer, judging by the bars on his collar, sat forward in his saddle, his face hard.
"We're looking for the Apache who raided a supply wagon 2 weeks back," the officer called out. 3 men dead. Who stolen? We got witnesses say the raiders came from this direction. Rowan didn't move. "We raid no one." "That's what they all say," the officer replied. "But the tracks led here, so either you did it or you know who did." "We know nothing," Rowan said. "We hunt, we trade, we do not attack wagons." "You expect me to believe that?"
"I do not care what you believe,"
Rowan said flatly.
"It is the truth."
The officer's jaw tightened. He looked past Rowan, scanning the village, and his gaze landed on Adeline. "You," he said. "Come here." Adeline's stomach dropped. She didn't move. "I said come here," the officer repeated, his tone harder. Rowan shifted, putting himself between Adeline and the soldiers. "She stays. She's white," the officer said, "which means she's not one of you. And if you're holding her against her will, I'm not," Adeline said loudly. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Then what are you doing here?" Adeline stepped forward, ignoring Rowan's muttered curse. She stopped beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I live here," she said. "By choice." The officer looked her up and down, his expression somewhere between disgust and disbelief. "You live with savages by choice."
"They're not savages," Adeline said, her voice shaking with anger. "They're people, and they didn't raid your wagon."
"How would you know?"
"Because I know them," Adeline said. "Because I've been here for months and I've seen how they live. They don't attack people. They don't steal. They survive." The officer leaned back in his saddle, his mouth curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. "And what's your name, miss?"
"Adeline Wren."
"Adeline Wren," the officer repeated like he was testing the sound of it. "You wouldn't happen to be the same Adeline Wren who was supposed to arrive in Ashford back in January, would you?" Adeline's blood ran cold. "Yes." "Interesting," the officer said. "Because the folks in Ashford reported you dead, said your stagecoach was attacked by raiders. Apache raiders." "The stagecoach was attacked," Adeline said. "But not by them. By white men. Outlaws. They killed everyone else and burned the coach. I barely escaped." "And then what?" the officer asked. "You just happened to stumble into an Apache village?" "I was dying in the desert," Adeline said. "Rowan found me. He saved my life." "Rowan," the officer said, looking at him. "That your name?" Rowan didn't answer. "So let me get this straight," the officer continued. "You get rescued by an Apache, and instead of returning to civilization, you decide to stay here, live like them, marry one of them, maybe?" Adeline lifted her chin. "Yes." The officer shook his head slowly. "That's a hell of a story, Miss Wren, but it doesn't change facts. We got 3 dead men and a missing supply wagon, and the tracks led here. So either you people come clean, or we come back with more men and search this place ourselves." "You will find nothing," Rowan said, "because there is nothing to find." "We'll see about that," the officer said. He pulled his horse around and the other soldiers followed. "You've got 2 days. After that, we're coming back. And if we find out you've been lying—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The soldiers rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Adeline felt like she was going to be sick. Rowan turned to her, his face like stone. "You should not have spoken." "Someone had to," Adeline said. "Not you," Rowan said. "They see you as one of us now. That puts you in danger." "I'm already in danger," Adeline shot back. "We all are, and standing there silent wasn't going to change that." Rowan's jaw worked, but he didn't argue. He just turned and walked toward the elders, who were already gathering to discuss what had just happened. Adeline stood there, her hands shaking, and tried to figure out what the hell they were going to do. The meeting lasted hours. Adeline sat outside the elders' wickiup, listening to the rise and fall of voices. She couldn't follow most of it. Her Apache was still too limited, but she caught enough to understand the gist. Some wanted to move, pack up and go deeper into the canyon where the soldiers couldn't follow. Others wanted to stay, to stand their ground, to refuse to be driven out by false accusations. Rowan's voice cut through the others, sharp and insistent. He was arguing for something, but Adeline couldn't tell what. Finally, the elder who spoke English emerged. He looked tired. "We will stay," he said. "For now. But we prepare. If the soldiers come back, we will be ready." "Ready how?" Adeline asked. The elder looked at her. "To defend ourselves, or to leave, whichever is necessary." "They'll kill you if you defend yourselves," Adeline said. "They'll call it an uprising and bring more soldiers." "And if we run, they will hunt us," the elder said. "There is no good choice. Only choices." He walked away, leaving Adeline standing there with her chest tight. Rowan came out a moment later. He looked at her, then jerked his head toward their wickiup. "Come." Adeline followed him inside. He started pacing immediately, his movements tight and controlled. "This is wrong," he said. "All of it. We did nothing. We have done nothing. And still they come." "I know," Adeline said. "They will not believe us. They do not want to believe us. They want a reason to push us out, to take this land, and they will use anything to justify it." "I know," Adeline said again. Rowan stopped pacing and looked at her. "You should go." Adeline blinked. "What?" "You should go back to Ashford, to the town. Tell them you were held captive. Tell them we forced you. Tell them whatever they need to hear, but get out before this gets worse." "Are you serious?" Adeline asked, her voice rising. "You think I'm going to leave you? Leave all of this? After everything?" "I think you have a chance to survive," Rowan said, "and I will not watch you die because of me." "I'm not dying because of you," Adeline said, "and I'm not leaving." Adeline, "No, she said, stepping closer. "We're married, remember? You made this big speech about choosing me every day. Well, I'm choosing you too, and that means I stay." Rowan's expression cracked just for a moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You are impossible," he muttered into her hair. "I learned from the best," Adeline said. They stood like that for a long time, clinging to each other in the dim light, while outside the village prepared for something neither of them wanted to face. The next day, Adeline made a decision. She found Rowan near the horses and said, "I'm going back to Ashford." He spun around, his face going hard. "We talked about this." "Not to stay," Adeline interrupted. "To talk to them, to try to stop this before it starts." "They will not listen." "Maybe not," Adeline said, "but I have to try, because if I don't, and something happens, I'll never forgive myself." Rowan stared at her, his jaw tight. "And if they arrest you, if they hurt you, then you come get me," Adeline said. "But I don't think they will. I'm still white, Rowan. As much as I hate it, that matters to them. They'll listen to me in a way they won't listen to you." Rowan looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to lock her in the wickiup and never let her leave, but he didn't. "I will go with you," he said finally. "No," Adeline said. "If you come, they'll see it as a threat. I need to go alone." "Absolutely not." "Rowan, I will stay back," Rowan said. "Out of sight, but I will be there. And if anything happens, I will not wait." Adeline knew better than to argue. "Fine." They left within the hour. The ride to Ashford took most of the day. Rowan kept his distance, staying a quarter-mile back, but Adeline could feel him there, watching, waiting. When the town came into view, her stomach twisted. She dismounted at the edge of town and walked the rest of the way on foot, leading the horse. People stared. A few pointed. One woman gasped and pulled her child inside. Adeline ignored them all and headed straight for the building that served as both a general store and a makeshift town hall. A man was standing outside, tall, graying, with a star pinned to his vest. The sheriff. "Adeline Wren," he said, his voice flat. "Heard you were back." "I need to talk to you," Adeline said. "About what?" "About the soldiers who came to the Apache village 3 days ago. About the accusations they made." The sheriff's expression didn't change. "What about them?" "They're false," Adeline said. "The people I'm living with didn't raid any supply wagon. They don't raid anyone. And if the army attacks them, they'll be killing innocent people." The sheriff crossed his arms. "That's a bold claim, Miss Wren. You got proof?" "I've been living with them for months," Adeline said. I know them. I know how they live. They hunt. They trade. They keep to themselves. They don't. You've been living with savages for months, the sheriff interrupted, which means you've gone native, which means your word doesn't count for much. Adeline's hands clenched. My word is the truth. Maybe, the sheriff said, or maybe you're just protecting people who've got you convinced they're harmless. Either way, it doesn't matter. The army's got witnesses, they've got tracks, and they've got orders. If those Apache don't turn over the raiders, the army's going to assume they're all complicit. There are no raiders to turn over, Adeline said desperately. Don't you understand? This is a mistake, a terrible mistake, and people are going to die because of it. The sheriff sighed. I'm sorry, Miss Wren, I really am, but this isn't my jurisdiction. It's the army's, and once the army makes up its mind, there's not much anyone can do. There has to be something, Adeline said. There's not, the sheriff said. My advice? Get yourself out of there before things go bad. Come back to town. We'll find you a place to stay. You can start over. I don't want to start over, Adeline said. I want to stop a massacre. The sheriff looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You can't save everyone, Miss Wren. Sometimes the best you can do is save yourself. He turned and walked inside, leaving Adeline standing there with her chest heaving and her eyes burning. She'd failed. She mounted the horse and rode back out of town, her vision blurred with tears. Rowan appeared beside her before she'd gone a mile, his face tight with concern. What happened? They won't help, Adeline said, her voice breaking. They don't care. They think I've been brainwashed or something. They won't listen. Rowan reached over and took her hand. Then we go home. And we prepare. For what? Adeline asked. To fight? To die? To survive, Rowan said, however we can. They rode back to the village in silence, and Adeline felt the weight of failure pressing down on her chest like a stone. She'd tried. She'd tried so hard, but trying wasn't enough. Not in this world. Not in this war. The soldiers came back 4 days later, but this time they didn't come to talk. Adeline was helping Nahala prepare food when she heard the first gunshot. She dropped the bowl she was holding and ran outside. The canyon was filled with soldiers. Not 6 this time. Dozens. They were pouring in from the entrance, rifles raised, shouting orders. People were screaming, running. A child fell, and his mother scooped him up and bolted toward the wickiups. Rowan was already moving, shouting in Apache, rallying the men. They grabbed weapons, bows, knives, a few old rifles, and formed a defensive line. Get the women and children to the back, Rowan shouted. Now! Adeline grabbed the nearest child and shoved him toward Nahala. Go! Get everyone out! Nahala didn't argue. She started herding people toward the narrow trail that led deeper into the canyon. Adeline turned back toward the entrance, her heart hammering, and saw the officer from before. He was on foot now, his rifle aimed at Rowan. Stand down, the officer shouted. You're surrounded. We did nothing, Rowan shouted back. We are innocent. That's not what the evidence says, the officer replied. We found your people near the site of another attack. 2 more dead. You're done lying. That was not us, Rowan said, his voice raw with fury. You are killing innocent people. Drop your weapons, the officer said. Last warning. Rowan didn't move. The officer raised his rifle. Adeline didn't think. She just ran. She threw herself between Rowan and the officer, her arms spread wide. Stop! Please, just stop! The officer stared at her, his rifle still raised. Get out of the way, Miss Wren. No, Adeline said. You're making a mistake. You're about to kill people who've done nothing wrong. Please, just listen. I don't take orders from traitors, the officer said. I'm not a traitor, Adeline said. I'm just someone who knows the truth. And the truth is that you're wrong. These people didn't raid anyone. They didn't kill anyone. And if you attack them, you'll have blood on your hands that you can never wash off. The officer's jaw tightened. For a moment, Adeline thought she'd gotten through to him. Then he said, Move, or I'll move you myself. No! Rowan grabbed her arm. Adeline, get back! The officer fired. The world exploded into noise and chaos. Adeline felt Rowan yank her sideways, heard the crack of gunfire, saw soldiers rushing forward. The village erupted. Arrows flew, rifles fired, people screamed. Adeline hit the ground hard, her ears ringing, and scrambled toward cover. Rowan was beside her, pulling her behind a stack of supply crates. His face was streaked with dust and blood.
"Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No," Adeline gasped. "Are you?" "No, stay down."
He rose and fired his rifle, the sound deafening. A soldier fell. Another took his place. Adeline looked around wildly. The village was chaos. Wickiups were burning. People were fighting hand to hand. The elders were trying to organize a retreat, but the soldiers kept pushing forward. "We need to get everyone out," Adeline said. "We are trying," Rowan said through gritted teeth. A bullet hit the crate beside Adeline's head, splintering the wood. She flinched, then forced herself to move. She couldn't just hide. She had to do something. She grabbed a fallen rifle, she didn't know whose, and checked the chamber. It was loaded. "Adeline, what are you doing?" Rowan shouted. "Helping," she said. She rose, aimed at a soldier advancing on one of the women, and fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough to make him dive for cover. Rowan swore. "You are insane." "Probably," Adeline said. They fought side by side, covering each other, covering the retreat. Adeline's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the rifle, but she kept firing, kept moving. A soldier broke through the line and went for Rowan. Adeline saw it a second too late, saw the knife in the man's hand, saw Rowan turn just as the blade came down. She didn't think. She just threw herself forward. The knife bit into her side instead of Rowan's back. Pain exploded through her, white hot and blinding. She hit the ground, gasping, her hands clutching at the wound. "Adeline!" Rowan's voice was raw. He dropped beside her, his hands covering hers. "No, no, no!" "I'm okay," Adeline said, even though she wasn't, even though blood was seeping through her fingers and the world was starting to blur at the edges. Rowan's face was above hers, his eyes wild. Stay with me, Adeline." "I'm trying," she whispered. Rowan picked her up, his arms like iron around her, and ran. The world tilted and spun. Adeline heard gunfire, heard screaming, heard Rowan's harsh breathing as he carried her through the chaos. Then everything went dark. When Adeline opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was smoke. Not the thick black smoke of burning buildings, but the thin gray wisps of a carefully tended fire. The second thing she saw was Rowan's face, drawn and exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days. "You're awake," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. Adeline tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her side, sharp and vicious, and she gasped. "Don't move," Rowan said, his hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. "You're still healing." "What happened?" Adeline's throat was raw, her voice barely a whisper. "You took a knife for me," Rowan said, like an idiot. "Did we?" Adeline stopped, swallowed. "The village, the people. Did they?" Rowan's expression went dark. "Most got out, into the deep canyon. The soldiers couldn't follow." "Most," Adeline repeated. "Not all." Rowan looked away. "No, not all." Adeline closed her eyes against the burn of tears. She'd known, even before she asked. She'd heard the gunfire, seen the chaos, but knowing and hearing it confirmed were two different kinds of pain. "How many?" she asked. 7 dead, Rowan said quietly. 3 wounded badly, 2 of the elders, a young mother, 4 men who fought to cover the retreat. Adeline's chest felt like it was caving in. 7 people, 7 lives, because of lies and fear and a refusal to listen. "And you?" she asked, forcing herself to look at him. "Are you hurt?" "Scratches," Rowan said. "Nothing that matters." "Everything matters," Adeline said. Rowan's jaw tightened. "You almost died. That matters more than scratches." "I didn't die," Adeline said. "I'm here." "Barely," Rowan said, and the anger in his voice wasn't directed at her. It was deeper than that, older. "You threw yourself in front of a blade. You could have, if it had gone deeper, if it had hit differently." He stopped, his hands curling into fists. "But it didn't," Adeline said. "I'm still here. We're still here." Rowan looked at her then, really looked at her, and the expression on his face was so raw it made her chest ache. "I cannot lose you," he said. "I will not survive it." Adeline reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face.
His skin was rough with stubble, warm under her palm. "You're not losing me," she said. "I'm too stubborn to die. You said so yourself." Rowan's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers, careful not to jostle her. "You are the most infuriating woman I have ever met," he said. "Good thing you married me then," Adeline said. This time, he did smile. Just a little. Just enough. Adeline closed her eyes and let herself rest against him, feeling his warmth, his steadiness, the way his breath matched hers. Outside, she could hear voices, low murmurs in Apache, the crackle of fires, the sound of people trying to rebuild something from nothing. "Where are we?" she asked. "Deep Canyon," Rowan said. "A place the soldiers cannot reach. Hidden. Safe. For now." "For now," Adeline repeated. Yes. She heard the weight in that word, the uncertainty, the fear he wouldn't name out loud. "What happens next?" she asked. Rowan pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "We survive. We rebuild. We mourn. And when you are strong enough, we decide where to go from here. And if the soldiers come back, then we fight," Rowan said simply. "Or we run. Whichever keeps us alive." Adeline nodded slowly. She didn't like either option, but she understood them, understood that in this world sometimes survival was the only victory you got. "Help me sit up," she said. Rowan frowned. "You should rest." "I've been resting," Adeline said. "How long have I been out?" 3 days. Adeline's eyes widened. 3 days? "You lost a lot of blood," Rowan said. "Nahala stitched you up, but it was close, too close." Adeline looked down at herself. She was wearing a clean shirt, not hers, and there was a thick bandage wrapped around her middle. When she shifted, she could feel the pull of stitches, the dull throb of healing flesh. "I need to see," she said. "See what?" "The people. The wounded. I need to know who made it, who didn't." Rowan hesitated, then nodded. He helped her sit up slowly, one arm supporting her back. The world tilted for a moment, and Adeline had to breathe through a wave of dizziness. "Steady," Rowan said. "I'm fine," Adeline lied. "You are a terrible liar." "I know." He helped her to her feet, and Adeline had to bite back a gasp at the pain. But she stayed upright, her hand gripping Rowan's arm, and after a moment the worst of it faded to a manageable ache. They stepped outside. The canyon was narrower here, the walls rising steep and red on either side. The village, if you could call it that, was a scattering of makeshift shelters built from salvaged materials and whatever they'd managed to carry. Fires burned in small pits. People sat in clusters, their faces hollow with grief and exhaustion. Nahala spotted Adeline and rose immediately, crossing to her with quick steps. She said something in Apache, her tone sharp, and Rowan translated. "She says you should be resting." "Tell her I'll rest when I'm dead," Adeline said. Rowan translated, and Nahala's mouth twitched. She said something else, and Rowan actually smiled. "What?" Adeline asked. "She says you are exactly as stubborn as I am," Rowan said, "and that we deserve each other." Despite everything, Adeline laughed. It hurt, pulling at her stitches, but it felt good, like proof she was still alive. Nahala gestured for them to follow and led them to a shelter where the wounded were being tended. There were 4 people inside, 3 men and 1 woman, all of them bandaged and pale. Adeline recognized 2 of them. One was the young man who'd helped Rowan train the horses. The other was the woman who'd ground corn beside her every morning. "Can I help?" Adeline asked. Nahala looked at her, then at Rowan, then back at Adeline. She said something, and Rowan translated. "She says you can check their wounds, make sure they are healing properly, but if you push yourself too hard, she will tie you to a tree." "Fair enough," Adeline said. She knelt beside the first man, moving carefully, and unwrapped his bandage. The wound was a bullet graze along his ribs, painful but clean. She rewrapped it with fresh cloth and moved to the next. The woman had taken a bullet through the shoulder. The entry wound was neat, but the exit wound was ragged, and Adeline could see the edges were inflamed. "This needs cleaning," she said, "and probably a poultice to draw out infection." Nahala nodded and fetched water and herbs. Together they cleaned and dressed the wound while the woman gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. When they were done, Adeline sat back,
her head spinning. Rowan was there immediately, his hand on her back. Enough, you need to rest. I'm fine. You're turning gray, Rowan said. That is not fine. Adeline didn't have the energy to argue. She let him help her back to their shelter, where he eased her down onto the blankets. Sleep, he said. I don't want to sleep, Adeline said. I don't know, do something. You are doing something, Rowan said. You are healing. That is enough. He sat beside her, his back against the wall, and Adeline leaned against his shoulder. She could feel the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the warmth of his body. Rowan, she said quietly. Yes? I'm sorry. He looked down at her, frowning. For what? For not being able to stop this. For failing. Rowan's expression softened. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You did not fail. You tried. You risked everything to try. That is more than most would do. But it wasn't enough, Adeline said. It never is, Rowan said. But that does not mean it was not worth doing. Adeline closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those words settle over her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that trying mattered even when it didn't work. But 7 people were dead, and nothing she did had stopped it. She fell asleep like that, curled against Rowan's side, and dreamed of smoke and gunfire and voices she'd never hear again. The days blurred together after that. Adeline healed slowly. Too slowly for her liking, but Nahala was relentless about making her rest. Rowan was worse. He barely let her walk 10 feet without hovering like she might collapse at any moment. I'm not made of glass, Adeline said one morning when he tried to carry firewood for her. No, Rowan agreed. You're made of stubbornness and poor decisions. That's rich coming from you. I know my faults, Rowan said. I married you, didn't I? Adeline threw a stick at him. He caught it without looking and added it to the fire. Despite the grief, despite the loss, life in the canyon found a rhythm. People rebuilt shelters, hunted, gathered, mourned their dead in quiet ceremonies that Adeline didn't fully understand but felt in her bones. The elders met often, their conversations tense and urgent. Adeline couldn't follow most of it, but she caught enough to know they were arguing about what to do next. Some wanted to stay in the canyon permanently, to hide, to wait out the soldiers. Others wanted to move farther west, into territory that wasn't so heavily patrolled. A few, very few, wanted to fight back. Rowan listened to all of it, but he didn't offer an opinion. Not at first. One evening, Adeline found him sitting alone on a ridge overlooking the canyon, his face shadowed. What are you thinking? She asked, sitting beside him carefully. Rowan didn't answer right away. He stared out at the desert, his expression unreadable. I am thinking, he said finally, that there is no good choice, only bad ones and worse ones. Which one are you leaning toward? I do not know, Rowan admitted. If we stay here, we are trapped. If we move, we risk being caught in the open. If we fight, he stopped. If we fight, more people die, Adeline finished. Yes. Adeline pulled her knees up to her chest, wincing at the pull on her healing wound. What do you want, Rowan? Not what's smart. Not what's safe. What do you want? Rowan looked at her then, and the raw honesty in his eyes made her chest ache. I want to live, he said, with you, in peace. I want to build a home and raise children and grow old without looking over my shoulder. I want what we had before the soldiers came, but I do not think we will ever have that again. Adeline reached over and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers tight and warm. Maybe not the same way, she said, but maybe we can build something new, something different. How? Rowan asked. When they hunt us? When they see us as enemies no matter what we do? I don't know, Adeline admitted, but I know we can't give up. Because if we do, they win, and I'm not ready to let them win. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned over and kissed her, soft and lingering. You are impossible, he said against her mouth. You keep saying that, Adeline said, because it is true. 2 weeks after the attack, a rider came to the canyon. He was alone, unarmed, and he rode under a white flag. Rowan and 3 other men met him at the entrance, weapons ready. Adeline watched from a distance, her heart pounding. The rider spoke to Rowan for several minutes. Adeline couldn't hear what was said, but she could see Rowan's body language shift from defensive to wary, to something that looked almost like surprise. When the rider left, Rowan came straight to her. "What did he want?" Adeline asked. "He says the officer in charge of the attack, the one who led the soldiers, has been removed from his post." Adeline's eyes widened. "Why?" "Because someone reported what happened," Rowan said. "Someone who was there. A soldier. He told his superiors that the attack was unprovoked, that we were not the raiders, that innocent people died." "And they believed him?" "Apparently," Rowan said. "The writer says the army wants to negotiate, to offer reparations, to—" He stopped, his jaw tight. "To apologize." Adeline stared at him. "An apology?" "Yes. For 7 dead," Adeline said, her voice flat. "For burning our village. For nearly killing us all." "Yes," Rowan said again. Adeline felt something hot and bitter rise in her throat. "That's not enough." "I know," Rowan said quietly. "But it is something." "It's nothing," Adeline said. "It's words. Words don't bring people back." "No," Rowan agreed. "They do not. But they might keep it from happening again." Adeline looked at him, her chest tight. "Do you believe that?" Rowan hesitated. "I want to." The elders called a meeting that night. Everyone gathered around the central fire, their faces lit by flickering flames. The elder who spoke English stood and addressed the group. "The army has sent word," he said. "They offer peace. They offer payment for what was taken. They offer safe passage if we wish to move." "And what do they want in return?" one of the men asked. "Our word that we will not retaliate," the elder said. "Our agreement to stay in designated territory. Our cooperation." "Cooperation," another man spat. "They murder us and then ask us to cooperate." "They ask us to survive," the elder said. "That is what this is, a chance to survive." "It is surrender," someone else said. "It is pragmatism," the elder replied. "We are not strong enough to fight the army. We are not numerous enough to win a war. If we refuse this offer, they will come again, and next time they will not stop until we are gone." The group erupted into argument. Voices rose in anger, in grief, in fear. Adeline sat beside Rowan listening, her hands clenched in her lap. Finally, Rowan stood. The group fell silent. "I do not like this offer," Rowan said. "It tastes like ash. It feels like defeat. But the elder is right. We cannot win a war. We can only survive. And if this is how we survive, by swallowing pride, by accepting words instead of justice, then that is what we do." "And if they break their word," someone asked, "then we deal with that when it comes," Rowan said. "But until then, we live. We rebuild. We remember the ones we lost, and we do not let their deaths be for nothing." He sat down, and the fire crackled in the silence. After a long moment, the elder spoke again. "We will vote. Those who wish to accept the offer, speak now." One by one, people voiced their agreement, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't see another choice. When it was done, the elder nodded. "It is decided. We will meet with the army, we will negotiate, and we will see if their words hold weight." Adeline looked at Rowan. His face was hard, his jaw tight, but he didn't argue. Later, when they were alone, Adeline asked, "Do you really believe this will work?" "No," Rowan said, "but I believe it is better than the alternative." "Which is?" "Watching everyone I love die," Rowan said simply. Adeline didn't have an answer to that. The negotiations took place a week later, in a neutral location halfway between the canyon and Ashford. Rowan went, along with 2 of the elders. Adeline insisted on coming too. "You are still healing," Rowan argued. "I don't care," Adeline said. "I'm coming." Rowan knew better than to fight her on it. They rode out in the early morning, the sun just beginning to crest the horizon. The meeting place was a flat stretch of desert with a single scraggly tree providing minimal shade. The army was already there. A new officer, younger than the last one, with a face that looked like it hadn't seen much hardship, stood, with 2 soldiers flanking him. Rowan dismounted and walked forward. Adeline stayed on the horse, close enough to hear but far enough to avoid drawing attention. "You're Rowan," the officer said. "Yes." "I'm Lieutenant Graves," the officer said. "I've been sent to negotiate on behalf of the United States Army." Rowan didn't respond. Graves cleared his throat. First, I want to say that what happened to your people was a mistake, a tragic mistake. The officer responsible has been disciplined, and we are prepared to offer compensation. Compensation, Rowan repeated, his tone flat. Yes. Supplies. Food. Blankets. Anything you need to rebuild. And what do you want in return? Rowan asked. Your cooperation, Graves said. We need assurance that there won't be retaliation, that your people will remain in designated territory, that we can coexist peacefully. You attack us, kill our people, burn our homes, and then ask us to cooperate, Rowan said. You must think we are fools. Graves flinched. I don't think that. I think you're people who've been wronged, and I'm trying to make it right. You cannot make it right, Rowan said, but you can prevent it from happening again. That's what I'm trying to do, Graves said. Rowan stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, We will accept your supplies. We will agree to your terms. But understand this. If your people come for us again, if they harm one more person under false pretenses, there will be no more negotiations. We will defend ourselves. And we will not stop until we have justice. Graves swallowed. Understood. Good, Rowan said. He turned and walked back to his horse. Adeline looked at the lieutenant. He looked young, scared, like he was in over his head. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. They returned to the canyon with wagon loads of supplies, food, blankets, tools, medicine. It felt like a bribe, like hush money, but it was also survival. The people took what they needed and began the slow process of rebuilding. Not in the same place. The old village was too exposed, too vulnerable. But here, in the deep canyon, where the walls offered protection and the soldiers couldn't easily reach, Adeline threw herself into the work. She helped build shelters, tended the wounded, organized supplies. She didn't let herself stop, didn't let herself think, because if she stopped, if she thought too much, the weight of everything that had happened would crush her. Rowan worked beside her, silent and steady. He didn't talk much, didn't smile, but he was there, always there. One evening, after a long day of hauling stones for a new shelter, Adeline sat by the fire and stared into the flames. Rowan sat beside her, his shoulder pressed against hers. Are you all right? He asked. No, Adeline said honestly. But I will be. When? I don't know, Adeline said. Maybe never. Maybe this is just how it is now. Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I used to think strength meant not breaking, but I think it means breaking and still getting up. Adeline looked at him. When did you get so wise? I married you, Rowan said. I had to learn something. Adeline laughed, and it felt good, felt human. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that, watching the fire burn down to embers. Around them, the canyon was alive with the sounds of people rebuilding, talking, laughing, even. It wasn't the same as before. It would never be the same. But it was something. And sometimes, something was enough. A month after the negotiations, Adeline realized something had changed. Not in the village, not in the people. In her. She was standing by the river, washing clothes, when it hit her. She wasn't thinking about Philadelphia anymore, wasn't thinking about the life she'd left behind, the teaching position she'd lost, the person she used to be. She was thinking about the shelter Rowan was building, about the herbs she needed to gather for medicine, about the child who'd scraped his knee that morning and would need the bandage changed. She was thinking about home, not the place she'd come from, but the place she'd chosen. Rowan appeared beside her, carrying a basket of fish he'd caught. You look different, he said. Different how? Less haunted, Rowan said. More here. Adeline smiled. Maybe I am. Rowan set down the basket and took her hand. I want to show you something. What? You will see. He led her along the river, past the village, to a spot where the canyon opened up into a small meadow. The grass was green, fed by a spring that bubbled up from the rocks. Trees grew along the edges, their branches heavy with leaves. This is it, Rowan said. Adeline looked around. This is what? Where I want to build our home, Rowan said. A real one. Not a shelter. A home. For us. For our family, if we have one. Adeline's breath caught. You've been planning this? Yes. For how long?
Since the day you woke up after the attack, Rowan said. Since I realized I could not lose you, that I would do anything to keep you safe, to give you the life you deserve. Adeline stepped closer, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. And what life is that? One where you are happy, Rowan said simply. One where you are free. One where you are mine and I am yours, and nothing else matters. Adeline looked up at him, her eyes burning. I already have that.
Rowan smiled. It was a real smile, full and warm, and it made her heart ache in the best way. Then let me build you a house to go with it, he said. Adeline laughed, tears spilling over. Okay, yes, build me a house. Rowan kissed her then, slow and deep, and Adeline felt the last piece of herself settle into place. This was it. This was where she belonged. Not because fate had brought her here, not because she'd had no other choice, but because she'd chosen it. Chosen him. Chosen this life, with all its hardship and beauty and uncertainty. And she would keep choosing it, every day, for as long as she lived. Building the house took 3 months. Rowan worked from dawn until dusk, cutting timber from the canyon slopes, shaping stones from the riverbed, weaving branches for the roof. Adeline worked beside him when her strength allowed, hauling materials, mixing clay for mortar, her hands blistered and sore but steady. Other people helped too. The young man who'd been wounded brought his brother to lift the heavy beams. Nahala showed Adeline how to weave grass mats for the floor. Even the children pitched in, gathering smaller stones and stacking them in careful piles. It wasn't a grand house. It wasn't fancy. But it was solid, real. The kind of place that could withstand storms and time and whatever else the world threw at it. When the frame was finally up, Rowan stood back and looked at it, his hands on his hips, sweat dripping down his face. It's crooked, he said. Adeline laughed. It's perfect. The door is too small. Then we'll duck. The roof might leak. Then we'll fix it, Adeline said. She walked over and took his hand. Stop looking for problems. Look at what you built. Rowan looked at the house, then at her. His expression softened. What we built. Fine, Adeline said. What we built. That night they slept inside for the first time. There was no furniture yet, just blankets spread on the floor, but it felt like a palace. The walls kept out the wind. The roof kept out the stars. And when Adeline curled up against Rowan's side, listening to his heartbeat, she felt safer than she had in months. I could get used to this, she murmured. You better, Rowan said, because I am not building another one. Adeline smiled against his chest. Deal. Winter came early that year, bringing cold winds and frost that crept across the canyon in the mornings. The village adjusted, preparing fires, storing food, reinforcing shelters against the weather. Adeline taught herself how to tan hides, how to preserve meat, how to make the most of what little they had. It was hard work, tedious. But there was something satisfying about it, about taking raw materials and turning them into something useful. One afternoon, while she was scraping a deer hide, one of the village children approached. A girl, maybe 10, with wide dark eyes and braids that hung past her shoulders. Can you teach me? The girl asked in halting English. Adeline looked up, surprised. Teach you what? Words, the girl said. English words. So I can talk to soldiers if they come again. Adeline's chest tightened. The idea of soldiers coming again made her stomach turn. But she understood the impulse. Knowledge was power. Language was survival. What's your name? Adeline asked. Kaya. All right, Kaya, Adeline said. Sit down. Let's start with the basics. They spent an hour going over simple words. Hello, goodbye, water, food, help. Kaya was quick, absorbing the vocabulary like a sponge, and by the end of the lesson she was stringing together short sentences. You're a good student, Adeline said. Kaya beamed. Will you teach me more? If you want, Adeline said. But you have to teach me Apache in return. Kaya nodded eagerly. Deal. The lessons became a regular thing. Kaya came every afternoon, sometimes alone, sometimes with other children. Adeline taught them English, and they taught her Apache. Her vocabulary grew slowly, painfully, but it grew. She could greet people now. ask basic questions, understand more of the conversations happening around her. Rowan noticed. "You are learning fast," he said one evening. "Not fast enough," Adeline said. "I still sound like a child."
"You sound like someone trying," Rowan said. "That is what matters." Adeline looked at him. "Do you think they'll ever really see me as one of them?" Rowan was quiet for a moment. "Some already do. Others will take time. But you have something most outsiders do not." "What's that?" "You stayed," Rowan said simply. "You did not leave when it got hard. You did not run when the soldiers came. You fought. You bled. That means something."
Adeline nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that actions could outweigh origins, but she also knew the world didn't work that way. Not usually. Not easily. Still, she kept trying. Spring arrived with a rush of green. The canyon bloomed, wildflowers sprouted between rocks. The river ran high with snowmelt. Birds returned, filling the air with song. Adeline planted a garden near the house. Vegetables she'd bartered for from a traveling trader. Seeds she'd saved from their rations. She had no idea if they'd grow, but she planted them anyway, pressing them into the dirt with careful hands, whispering silent prayers to nothing in particular. 2 weeks later, the first sprouts appeared. Adeline knelt in the dirt, staring at the tiny green shoots, and felt something unlock in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed this. Proof that things could grow, that life could return even after devastation. Rowan found her there, her hands covered in soil, tears running down her face. "Are you hurt?" he asked, dropping to his knees beside her. "No," Adeline said, laughing through the tears. "Look, they're growing." Rowan looked at the sprouts, then back at her. A slow smile spread across his face. "Of course they are. You do not know how to quit." "Damn right I don't," Adeline said. He kissed her then, tasting like salt and sunshine, and Adeline felt the last shadow of fear lift off her shoulders. They were going to be okay. Not perfect. Not easy. But okay. And sometimes okay was everything. The village continued to rebuild. New shelters went up. Old wounds healed. The dead were mourned, their names spoken in ceremonies that Adeline still didn't fully understand but participated in anyway. Life found a rhythm. Work in the morning. Lessons in the afternoon. Stories around the fire at night. It wasn't the life Adeline had imagined for herself back in Philadelphia, but it was a good life, an honest one. One evening, the elder who spoke English approached her. "Adeline," he said, "walk with me." Adeline glanced at Rowan, who nodded. She stood and followed the elder away from the fire along the river path. They walked in silence for a while. Then the elder said, "You have been with us nearly a year now." "Has it been that long?" Adeline asked. "Yes, and in that time you have proven yourself. You work hard. You learn. You care for our people as if they were your own." "They are my own," Adeline said. The elder smiled. "Yes. That is why I am speaking to you. The council has discussed it, and we would like to offer you something." "What?" "A place," the elder said. "Not as a guest, not as Rowan's wife, though you are that too, but as a member of the council, a voice in decisions, a teacher for our children." Adeline stopped walking. "You want me on the council? We need people who can bridge worlds," the elder said, "who understand both our ways and theirs. You are that person, Adeline, whether you meant to be or not." Adeline's throat tightened. "I don't know if I'm qualified." "You saved lives during the attack," the elder said. "You tried to stop the soldiers before they came. You have taught our children skills they will need to survive in a changing world. You are more qualified than you think." Adeline looked out at the river, her mind racing. A year ago she'd been a stranger here, an outsider, someone who didn't belong. Now they were offering her a seat at the table. "I'll do it," she said. "If you think I can help, I'll do it." The elder nodded. "Good. We meet in 3 days. Be ready." He turned and walked back toward the village, leaving Adeline standing by the river, her heart pounding. When she told Rowan, he didn't look surprised. "I knew they would ask," he said. "You did?" "You are impossible to ignore," Rowan said. "In the best way." Adeline shoved him. "You could have warned me." "And ruined the surprise?" Rowan grinned. "Never." The council meeting was held in the largest shelter in the village, with all the elders present. Adeline sat beside Rowan, her hands folded in her lap, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. The elder who spoke English opened the meeting. We have many things to discuss: the winter stores, the spring planting, the trade routes, but first I want to address something that affects us all. He looked around the circle. The army has kept its word. There have been no more attacks, no more false accusations. But we cannot assume this peace will last forever. We must be prepared, we must be smart, and we must be unified. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. That is why we have asked Adeline to join us, the elder continued. She understands the world beyond this canyon in ways we do not. She can help us navigate it, if we let her. One of the older men spoke up, his tone skeptical. She is still an outsider. How do we know she will put our interests first? Because she has already proven it, Rowan said, his voice firm. She took a knife meant for me. She fought beside us when she could have run. She has bled for this village. What more proof do you need? The man was silent. Another elder, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, spoke. I agree with Rowan. Adeline has earned her place, but I have a question for her. Adeline straightened. Yes? If the army comes again, the woman said, and they ask you to choose between us and them, what will you do? The shelter went quiet. Adeline met the woman's gaze. I already made that choice. The day I came back here, instead of staying in Ashford. The day I married Rowan. The day I fought beside you. I chose you, and I'll keep choosing you. Every time. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Good. That is all I needed to hear. The meeting continued, and Adeline listened, offered opinions when asked, and tried to keep up with the rapid-fire Apache that still occasionally left her lost. But she was there. She had a voice, and people were listening. It felt like winning. Months passed. The garden flourished. The village grew. New families arrived, people displaced by conflicts elsewhere, looking for safety. The canyon became a refuge, a place where different groups could coexist if they were willing to work for it. Adeline took on more responsibilities. She taught English to anyone who wanted to learn. She helped mediate disputes. She worked with the healers, combining her limited medical knowledge with their deep understanding of the land. It was exhausting, fulfilling, terrifying. Everything she'd never known she wanted. One afternoon, she was tending to a child with a fever when Nahala appeared at her side. You are good at this, Nahala said in Apache. Adeline understood enough to respond. Thank you, I try. You do more than try, Nahala said. You care. That is the difference. Adeline looked at the old woman, who had become something like a mother to her over the past year. I learned from you. Nahala smiled. Then I taught you well. That evening, Rowan came home with news. There is a gathering, he said, in 2 weeks, several villages, to discuss trade, alliances, the future. And? Adeline asked. The elders want us to go, Rowan said. Both of us. To represent the canyon. Adeline's eyes widened. Both of us? Yes. They think your presence will show that we are willing to work with outsiders, that we are not closed off. Are they sure? Adeline asked. I'm not exactly. You are exactly what they need, Rowan interrupted. You are proof that people can change, that bridges can be built. That is powerful, Adeline. Adeline nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. The gathering was held in a wide valley, 3 days' ride from the canyon. When Adeline and Rowan arrived, there were already dozens of people there, Apache from different bands, Navajo, even a few Pueblo. Fires dotted the landscape. Voices filled the air. Adeline felt out of place immediately. She was the only white person there, the only outsider. People stared, some with curiosity, some with suspicion. Rowan stayed close, his hand on the small of her back, a silent reassurance. The gathering lasted 3 days. Leaders spoke about trade routes, water rights, strategies for dealing with settlers and soldiers. Adeline listened more than she spoke, soaking in the conversations, the tensions, the careful diplomacy. On the second night, a woman approached her. She was younger than Adeline, with a baby strapped to her back and a wary expression. You are the white woman who lives with Rowan's people, she said in English. Yes, Adeline said. Why? It was a blunt question, but Adeline appreciated it. Because they saved my life, Adeline said, and because I fell in love with one of them, and because I believe people can choose where they belong. The woman studied her. And you believe you belong with them? I know I do, Adeline said. The woman nodded slowly. My people do not trust outsiders, but I think maybe you are different. I'm trying to be, Adeline said. The woman smiled just a little. That is enough. She walked away and Adeline felt something shift. Not acceptance, exactly, but acknowledgement. A recognition that she was trying and that trying mattered. On the third day, Rowan spoke before the gathered leaders. He talked about the attack on their village, about the false accusations, about the fragile peace they'd negotiated. We cannot trust the army, Rowan said, but we also cannot fight them. Not directly, not now. What we can do is build alliances, share information, support each other when trouble comes, because it will come. And when it does, we need to be ready. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. An older man stood. And what role does your wife play in this? Rowan looked at Adeline. She is a bridge, a voice that can speak to both worlds. If we are to survive, we need people like her, people who understand both sides. The man considered this. Then he nodded. Perhaps you are right. When the gathering ended, Adeline and Rowan rode back to the canyon with promises of trade, of mutual defense, of cooperation. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. You did well, Rowan said as they rode. I barely said anything, Adeline replied. You did not have to, Rowan said. Your presence said enough. Adeline looked at him. Do you think it'll work? This alliance? I think it has a better chance than we had before, Rowan said. And sometimes a better chance is all you get. Adeline nodded. She was learning that survival wasn't about guarantees. It was about improving the odds inch by inch and hoping that was enough. A year and a half after the attack, Adeline discovered she was pregnant. She'd suspected for a few weeks, the nausea, the exhaustion, the way her body felt different, but she'd been too afraid to say anything, too afraid to hope. Nahala confirmed it one morning, her weathered hands gentle on Adeline's belly. A baby, Nahala said in Apache. You will have a baby. Adeline sat down hard, her hands trembling. Are you sure? Nahala smiled. I am sure. Adeline didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did both. When she told Rowan, he went completely still. A baby, he said. Yes, our baby. Yes, Rowan, our baby. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. When he finally pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. I did not think... He stopped, swallowed. I did not think I would ever have this. Neither did I, Adeline said. They stood there holding each other while the world continued around them. And for the first time in a long time, Adeline felt something uncomplicated and pure. Joy. The pregnancy was hard. Adeline was sick for the first 3 months, barely able to keep food down. Nahala brewed teas that helped, but there were days when Adeline thought she might die from nausea alone. Rowan hovered, constantly, to the point where Adeline wanted to strangle him. I'm pregnant, not dying, she said one afternoon when he tried to carry water for her. You look pale. I'm always pale. I'm white. You know what I mean? Adeline sighed. Rowan, I love you, but if you don't let me do things myself, I'm going to lose my mind. Rowan looked wounded. I am only trying to help. I know, Adeline said, softening, and I appreciate it, but I need to feel useful. I need to feel like myself. Rowan nodded reluctantly. All right, but if you need anything, you'll be the first person I ask, Adeline promised. As her belly grew, so did the village's excitement. Children asked if they could touch it. Women offered advice, most of which Adeline couldn't follow. Even the men smiled when they saw her, offering congratulations in Apache she only half understood. It felt like the baby wasn't just hers and Rowan's. It was the village's, a symbol of hope, of continuity, of a future that might actually exist. One evening, Rowan was working on a cradle, carving it by hand, his movements careful and precise. Adeline sat beside him, watching. What if I'm terrible at this? She asked suddenly. Rowan looked up. At what? Being a mother. You will not be terrible.
You don't know that. Yes, I do, Rowan said. Because you care. Because you try. Because you do not give up, even when things are hard. Those are the things that matter. What if the baby doesn't fit in? Adeline asked. What if people see them as an outsider, like me? Rowan set down the cradle and took her hands. Then we teach them to be strong, to be proud, to know that they belong because they exist, not because others say so. And if anyone dares to make them feel otherwise, they will answer to me. Adeline laughed despite herself. You're going to be a terrifying father. Good, Rowan said. That is the goal. The baby was born in early spring, just as the canyon bloomed again. The labor was long, painful. Adeline screamed curses in both English and Apache, some of which made Nahala laugh despite the tension. Rowan stayed beside her the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking like he might pass out from stress. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the baby arrived. A girl. Tiny. Perfect. With a head full of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. Nahala cleaned her, wrapped her in a soft hide, and placed her in Adeline's arms. Adeline looked down at her daughter and felt her entire world shift. Hi, she whispered. I'm your mother, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise I'll figure it out. The baby blinked up at her, her dark eyes unfocused but curious. Rowan leaned over, his hand gentle on the baby's head. She is beautiful. She's ours, Adeline said, her voice breaking. Yes, Rowan said, she is ours. They named her Siani, a name that meant gift in Apache, because that's what she was. A gift they hadn't known they needed but couldn't imagine living without. The village celebrated her birth with a feast. People brought food, gifts, blessings. Kaya, the girl Adeline had been teaching, sat beside her and stared at the baby in awe. She is so small, Kaya said. She'll grow, Adeline said. Will you teach her English? Kaya asked. And Apache, Adeline said. And anything else she wants to learn. Kaya smiled. She will be smart, like you. Smarter, hopefully, Adeline said. That night Adeline sat outside the house, Siani asleep in her arms, and looked up at the stars. She thought about the stagecoach burning, about the desert, about the moment Rowan had extended his hand and she'd taken it. She thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd lost, how much she'd gained, and she thought about the future, about the world her daughter would grow up in, and the role she and Rowan would play in shaping it. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing ever was. But they'd face it together. As a family, as a village. As people who'd learned that survival meant more than just staying alive. It meant choosing to live, even when the world made it hard. Rowan came outside and sat beside her. She's asleep? He asked. For now, Adeline said. Give her 10 minutes. Rowan smiled. He put his arm around Adeline and she leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. I love you, she said. I love you too, Rowan replied, even though you are impossible. Especially because I'm impossible, Adeline corrected. Yes, Rowan agreed, especially because of that. Months turned into years. Siani grew from a baby into a toddler, then a curious child who asked 1,000 questions a day. Adeline taught her English and Apache, how to read and write, how to identify plants and dress wounds. Rowan taught her how to ride, how to track, how to move through the world with confidence and caution in equal measure. The village thrived. Trade routes expanded. Alliances strengthened. There were still tensions with settlers, with soldiers, with other groups competing for dwindling resources. But there was also cooperation, communication, a fragile web of relationships that held more often than it broke. Adeline became a fixture on the council. Her voice carried weight now, not because she was white, but because she'd proven herself, because she worked hard, because she cared. She helped negotiate with traders, using her understanding of both cultures to find common ground. She taught more children, building a small school in the village where anyone could learn. She tended the sick, trained others in basic medicine, and slowly built a network of healers across the region. It was exhausting, rewarding, more than she'd ever imagined for herself. One evening, when Siani was 5, Rowan came home with news. The army wants to meet, he said. Adeline looked up from the stew she was stirring. About what? A treaty, Rowan said. A formal one, recognizing our rights to this land, promising protection. Adeline set down the spoon.
Do you believe them? No, Rowan said, but I think we should hear what they have to say. The meeting was held in neutral territory with representatives from several Apache bands, the Army, and a government official who'd come all the way from the territorial capital. Adeline attended as part of the Canyon's delegation. She sat beside Rowan, her hands folded in her lap, and listened as the official laid out the terms. Land rights, protection, aid, in exchange for peace, for cooperation, for agreement not to interfere with settlers moving through the territory. It sounded good, too good. What's the catch? Adeline asked. The official looked at her, surprised. I'm sorry? There's always a catch, Adeline said. What is it? The official hesitated, then he said, The land we're offering is smaller than what you currently occupy. You'd need to relocate, consolidate. Murmurs of anger rippled through the Apache representatives. You are asking us to give up our home, Rowan said, his voice tight. I'm asking you to accept a compromise, the official said. The alternative is continued conflict, continued uncertainty. This way, you have legal protection, guarantees. Guarantees from people who have broken every promise they have ever made, one of the other Apache leaders said. The official's jaw tightened. I can't speak for the past, but I can tell you that this administration wants peace, and we're willing to put it in writing. The debate went on for hours, angry, tense. Adeline watched, listened, and felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on everyone in the room. Finally, the elder who spoke English stood. We will discuss this among ourselves, he said, and we will give you our answer in 1 week. The official nodded. That's fair. The Apache representatives gathered separately that night, and the conversation was fierce. We cannot trust them, one man said. They will take the smaller land now and then take that too when it suits them. And if we refuse, another asked, they will take it anyway. At least this way we have something in writing. Writing means nothing if they do not honor it. It means something if we can use it against them, if we can hold them accountable. Rowan listened to all of it, his face grim. When it was his turn to speak, he said, I do not like this treaty. I do not trust the people offering it, but I also do not want to watch more of our people die. If this gives us time to prepare, to build alliances, to strengthen our position, then maybe it is worth taking. And if it is a trap, someone asked, then we spring it knowing what we are walking into, Rowan said. That is better than walking in blind. The vote was close, but in the end they agreed to accept the treaty, not because they believed it would last, but because refusal felt like a faster path to destruction. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later, in a ceremony that felt more like a funeral than a celebration. Adeline stood beside Rowan, watching as leaders from both sides put their names on paper and tried to feel hopeful. She didn't, but she tried. Life continued under the treaty. The village moved to the designated land, a smaller canyon, less lush but defensible. They rebuilt. Again. Because that's what survival looked like. Building, losing, building again. Adeline threw herself into making the new place work. She established the school, organized the healers, continued teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Siani grew. She was 6 now, then 7, then 8. Bright, curious, stubborn as hell. She absorbed languages like a sponge, switching between English and Apache mid-sentence. She asked questions that had no good answers and demanded honesty even when it hurt. One day she asked, Why do people hate us? Adeline and Rowan were sitting outside, watching the sunset. Siani was between them, her head on Adeline's lap. They don't hate us, Adeline said carefully. They fear us. Because we're different. Because they don't understand us. That's stupid, Siani said. Yes, Rowan agreed. It is. So why don't they just learn, Siani asked. Why don't they try to understand? Because learning is hard, Adeline said. And fear is easy, and people choose easy things even when they know better. Siani was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I don't want to be like that. You won't be, Rowan said, because you already know better. Adeline looked at her daughter, at the fierce determination in her young face, and felt something swell in her chest. Pride, hope, fear. This child would grow up in a world that might not accept her, that might see her as too Apache, too white, too much of both, and not enough of either. But she'd also grow up strong,
loved. Certain of her place, even if the world wasn't. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. 10 years after the attack, Rowan and Adeline stood in front of the entire village. The old members and the new, the people they'd known from the beginning and the ones who'd come later. The elder who spoke English stood beside them, his face weathered but his eyes bright. "We gather today," he said, "to honor a union that has already been made in practice. But now we make it official in the eyes of the people, according to our traditions." Adeline looked at Rowan. They'd been married before, in a quiet ceremony shortly after she'd decided to stay. But this was different. This was public, a declaration before the entire community that they were family, that they belonged to each other and to the village. Rowan took her hands. His palms were rough, scarred from years of work, but they were steady, strong, home. "I choose you," he said. "Not because fate brought you here, not because you had nowhere else to go, but because you are the strongest, stubbornest, most impossible woman I have ever known. And I love you for it. I love you because you did not give up, not on yourself, not on me, not on us. I will keep choosing you, Adeline, every day, until I cannot choose anymore." Adeline's vision blurred. "I choose you too. I choose this life, this place, these people, not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it's real, because it's mine, because you're mine, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." The elder placed a woven cord around their joined hands, binding them together. "Before the people," he said, "you are one, in joy and in sorrow, in peace and in conflict, in life and in death. What is given cannot be taken back. What is chosen cannot be unchosen." He looked at the crowd. "Do you accept this union?" A chorus of voices answered. "We accept." The elder smiled. "Then it is done." Rowan pulled Adeline into his arms and kissed her, and the village erupted in cheers. Siani ran up and threw her arms around both of them, laughing, and Adeline held her close, feeling the weight of everything they'd built together. This was it. This was family. Not the one she'd been born into, but the one she'd chosen, the one she'd fought for, the one that had fought for her in return. The celebration lasted late into the night. There was food, music, dancing. Adeline danced with Rowan, with Siani, with Nahala and Kaya, and a dozen others. Her feet hurt. Her face hurt from smiling, but she couldn't stop, because this was joy. Pure, uncomplicated, hard-won joy. Later, when the fires had burned low and most people had gone to sleep, Adeline and Rowan sat outside their house, looking up at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Rowan asked. "Staying here?" "Never," Adeline said without hesitation. "Do you regret bringing me here?" "Never," Rowan echoed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Adeline said, "I've been thinking." "About what?" "About what we've built here, about how fragile it is, about how easily it could all fall apart." Rowan looked at her. "You are worried." "I'm always worried," Adeline said, "but I'm also hopeful. Because I think we're proving something. That people can change. That bridges can be built. That love is stronger than fear if you let it be." "You sound like an elder," Rowan said. Adeline laughed. "Maybe I'm getting old." "We both are," Rowan said. He took her hand. "But I would not want to grow old with anyone else." "Good," Adeline said, "because you're stuck with me." "I know," Rowan said. "That is the best part." They sat there under the stars, hands intertwined, and Adeline thought about the journey that had brought her here, the stagecoach burning, the desert, the moment she'd taken Rowan's hand and chosen to survive. She thought about all the choices that had followed, the ones that had hurt, the ones that had healed, the ones that had shaped her into the person she was now. And she thought about the future, about Siani and the world she'd inherit, about the work still left to do, about the fight still ahead. But she wasn't afraid, because she'd learned something in the years since the stagecoach burned. She'd learned that fear was inevitable, but it didn't have to be controlling. That pain was unavoidable, but it didn't have to be permanent. That belonging wasn't about where you came from, but about where you chose to plant your feet and refuse to move. She'd learned that home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built, piece by piece, with the people you loved and the choices you made. And she'd built one hell of a home.
Years later, when Siani was grown and married with children of her own, she asked Adeline to tell her the story. The whole story. How she'd come to the canyon, how she'd met Rowan, how she'd stayed. They were sitting by the river watching Siani's children play in the shallows. Adeline was older now, her hair streaked with gray, her hands gnarled with arthritis, but her eyes were still sharp, still fierce. "Why do you want to know?" Adeline asked. "Because I want my children to know," Siani said. "I want them to understand where they come from, who they come from." Adeline looked at her daughter, then at the grandchildren laughing in the water. She saw pieces of herself in them, pieces of Rowan, pieces of two worlds that had collided and somehow, against all odds, made something new. "All right," Adeline said, "but it's not a pretty story." "The best ones never are," Siani said. So Adeline told her. About the stagecoach in the desert, about the first time she saw Rowan and the choice she made to take his hand. About the village and the attack and the knife she'd taken to save his life. About the treaty and the rebuilding and the 1,000 small decisions that had brought them here. When she finished, Siani was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You were brave." "I was terrified," Adeline corrected, "but I didn't let that stop me." "That's what brave is," Siani said. Adeline smiled. "Maybe." She looked out at the river, at the canyon walls rising red and ancient in the afternoon light. She thought about everything this place had given her, everything it had taken, everything it had taught her. And she thought about the truth she'd learned slowly and painfully over the years. That love wasn't about perfection. It was about choice, about showing up day after day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That belonging wasn't given. It was earned, through work, through sacrifice, through the willingness to fight for a place at the table and to make room for others in return. That hope wasn't naive. It was radical, a refusal to let fear and hatred win, even when the odds were stacked against you. That survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about living with intention, with purpose, with love. And that sometimes the best thing you could do was take a stranger's hand in the desert and see where it led. Rowan appeared, walking slowly with the help of a carved walking stick. He'd aged too, his hair white, his movements careful, but his eyes were still the same, still steady, still home. He sat beside Adeline and took her hand without a word. Siani looked at them, at their intertwined fingers, and smiled. "You two are disgustingly sweet." "We are perfect," Rowan said. "We are not," Adeline corrected. "But we're ours." Rowan squeezed her hand. "Yes, we are ours." They sat there by the river, 3 generations bound by love and choice and the refusal to give up, and watched the sun sink toward the horizon. The world was still hard, still uncertain, still full of people who chose fear over understanding. But here, in this canyon, there was also love, community, hope. And that was enough. It had to be. Because in the end, that's all any of us really have. The people we choose, the lives we build, the small acts of courage that add up to something bigger than ourselves. Adeline had started with nothing, a burning stagecoach and a handful of ashes. She'd built a life, a family, a legacy. And if she'd learned anything, it was this, that sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations. That sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. That sometimes the best thing you can do is survive, and then keep surviving, until one day you look around and realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're living, and that makes all the difference.